Well, we now have a conversation with Didmus Barasa, the MP for Kimberley constituency. He's here with us in the studio. Good morning, Shimua.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Karibu sana. That's the hot seat of the situation.
Nashukuru.
Tumekuinvite mara kadhaa. Kuna time tulikuinvite lakini we were told that you've been called for an mkutano wa dharura.
Wa ghafla.
Ukakimbia pale.
Yes.
Wa ghafla. Haya. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Asante sana.
We want to talk about the politics of the country and, of course, what's happening. Now, we know that UDA, which party sponsored you to Parliament?
UDA.
Yeah, you go. UDA has a new Secretary General, Cleopa Malala, the former senator. And no sooner had he assumed office than he declared this is the direction that a spokesperson of the party and Secretary General of the party that we want to start pursuing, which is talking about these other parties coming together and forming one giant, mighty party. Cleopa Malala is a former senator for Kakamega County. Now, the leadership of from Western Kenya, some of them have come out, even those that are not in Kenya Kwanza, to say, no, we can't go this direction. The people of Murembe need to have their own fallback position, a voice that they will need to have. Well, that among others are what we want to discuss today. But first, to welcome you is this man called C.T. Muga, and he has the day's proverb and is from a book.
The proverb is from a book, not C.T.
Well, the reason why this is important is because this book, it's a book that very many Kenyans have read. It's a book called Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. Now, why it's significant is, for me, is because it was first published in the English language on the 17th of June 1958. That is 3 months after I had been born. So, we are Nirika yangu. So the book and I share certain commonality. But significantly is what it is in terms of the proverbs that you find in the book. How, beyond just talking about the richness of African culture, which proverbs actually bring out, but essentially speaking truth to situations in a way that traverses time and space. So, this day's proverb: the sun will shine on those who stand before it, shine on those who kneel. Very good.
Again.
Paying attention, good. The sun will shine on those who stand before it.
Punctuation is important.
Okay. The sun, will shine on those who stand before it.
Wow.
All right. The sun will shine on those who stand, before it shines on those who kneel under them.
Well,
good student. Yes.
The sun has been shining. Sheesh.
The sun, will, shine, before, those who stand, before,
it. Full
comma.
stop. Or maybe I've stood too long in the sun.
Yeah, probably. So, Didmus, the proverb is the sun will shine on those who stand before it shines on those who kneel before them. What do you understand from that proverb? It'll shine on those who stand before it shines on those who kneel before them. Or under them.
From where I sit, I can understand it to mean that in life, you don't just sit there. You have to engage in doing something. You can stand at the door for 3 hours, yet the door is written on push, that you just push, then it's open. So that is how I understand this proverb.
You've got to stand and take action.
Yes.
A good one.
Yeah.
A good one. So straight into that conversation. From where you stand as a member of parliament elected under a UDA ticket, and having seen the previous, attempts at consolidating parties. This is not the first time that we've had conversations about consolidating giant parties. Mwai Kibaki had talked about it and came up with PNU and said, you know what, I think these other parties, mine, DP and others, should come together and be PNU. Then we saw Jubilee. Now we are seeing the conversation about UDA and the others coming together to form a giant party. Where do you stand?
First, I want to make it clear that I share the same sentiments with the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. In his address to the nation recently, he said those statements about Kenya Kwanza affiliate parties folding their parties is Cleophas Malala's own creation, his own personal statement. That is not the party position. We are coming from a very bad history. You know, the history of Jubilee. You remember when affiliate parties were collapsed, and the one Raphael Tuju became the person that will make unilateral decisions. And that formed the genesis of the collapse of one giant Jubilee party. We don't want to walk that route. Kenya Kwanza is made up of quite a number of affiliate parties. These affiliate parties have got their party leaders. Even if we were to collapse them into one party, there are several questions that one will pose. You know, there are several scenarios. Collapse all parties to UDA, or collapse all parties to Kenya Kwanza, or collapse all parties to ANC, or to Ford Kenya, or to Maendeleo Chap Chap. So those are the questions. So what we are saying, what drives us, what drives the coalition, is for the coalition to continue holding together and be more stronger than before. And if one of the conversations that are for the Kenya Kwanza coalition to be stronger, we must merge parties into one party. That must be a conversation that will be engineered by all affiliate parties, not a single individual. We must respect party organs, our individual party organs, and so the affiliate parties that forms Kenya Kwanza. So I am not saying that folding parties is not a bad idea, or rather maintaining the single identity is not a bad idea. Or I'm simply saying that if such conversation is to be entertained, then everybody must be put on the table to give out their views. And we have since asked our new Secretary General, you know, this is his first time to be an SG of one of the biggest parties in this country, and we will ask him to go slow to avoid roadside declarations and announcements that brings friction amongst the member parties of Kenya Kwanza.
But then, this person was elevated to the position of Secretary General of the party just the other day. You know, soon after he was, declared or announced as the Secretary General, he starts making this conversation, even on the day of the new leadership of UDA being announced. It sounds to many of us that this is a conversation that took place during that meeting. Maybe it was not formally raised, but it was a suggestion that was put forth. And so what the Secretary General is doing is basically amplifying this as a proposal.
You know, where we have meetings, you can't rule out such proposals. Maybe there was such a proposal that maybe we fold parties. Maybe there was another one saying we maintain their identities. But the fact that he made those pronouncements immediately after being put in that position, it doesn't mean that it's a true position. You know, when I was first elected to the National Assembly in 2017, there is this thing we call culture shock. You know, you take time before you accept that, yes, I'm the new member of parliament in town. So we should forgive him about that thing. And the fact that he's a former senator for Kakamega, it doesn't therefore make that anything that he says we must take it to be in the true position. I say this because UDA is a party that respects structures. We have structures, and the Secretary General of UDA is a spokesperson of the party, not speaking about his own thoughts, but speaking the decision that has been arrived at by the party through the party positions, and we should learn to separate between Cleophas Malala, the immediate senator for Kakamega, and Cleophas Malala, the Secretary General of the giant party UDA.
Okay, so let's look aside from the Secretary General, if we can do that for a minute, and say, would it then be in the best interest, depending on what the party desire is, to actually fold up the affiliate parties and have one strong party? It seems as though that is where the leaning would be desired to be going. Would it be of any benefit?
We have the party hierarchy. We have the party leader who's the president, and then we have the deputy party leader who's his deputy, His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua. And what Rigathi Gachagua said was it yesterday?
The day before.
The day before. He was very categorical and candid that that was Malala's own statement, and that tells you that the party position is that we maintain the status quo as we are speaking today until in future when such debate will be formally introduced. When I say formally introduced, it means that all affiliate parties will be given their agenda. They can do their own meetings and discuss and come up with their party resolutions on whether to fold or not. And then we have maybe a very big meeting where management committees or NEC of different affiliate parties within Kenya Kwanza converges at a particular place and come up with a common front. We are not going to do things the Jubilee way, where that for you to follow me, I have to put a gun on your head. We are going to persuade people through reason and logic, not through coercion, dictatorship. We are going to bring the same way we brought everybody on board when we were looking for votes. We will maintain everybody on board in terms of the decisions that we are going to make as a party, as a coalition, in terms of the ideas which we will think will take our coalition forward. We will not leave anybody behind, the same way we never left anybody behind during campaigns.
You know what is of interest, if I'm to follow your thought trajectory? Only you who belong to UDA or this coalition know what was really discussed and the details that were discussed in the meeting and in the side meetings and whatever it is that is planned. I say this because when dealing with political parties, yes, you mentioned culture shock, but political parties also have their ways of testing the waters. Let's see what people think about this subject. Malala, I'm simply hypothesizing. Cleophas, you've just come in. Why don't we test the waters with this and see how people react to this? Why don't you speak loudly and say, this is what we want to do? Now, whether it's testing waters or whether it's his own view, this particular trend is tested and tried. Political organizations, literally, all political organizations around the world tend to head in that direction. You can call it a coalition, but what is a coalition? A coming together. Where people are more persuasive, then it becomes one party. But again, it is spoken of as though if it becomes one party, it's a bad thing. But is it really a bad thing?
I'm a PhD student. I'm a public administration, and there is a theory in a unit called behavioral science, where an organization can use grapevine to test the popularity of the decision they want to implement or make. Where one employee would say, "I've heard the management is planning to do A, B, C, D." Then, depending on how the employees will react, then the management will either change, or they can even come out and deny, or maybe refine it and then implement it. So my good friend has read some theory somewhere, but what I've told you is the practical, is what actually is transpiring and what we are going to do, so that we avoid these situations of people using their own theories to begin to think on behalf of our coalition. Don't use your theory, your imaginations, your knowledge in terms of understanding the terrain of African politics to force it into us. The position is we have not had any discussion about our parties folding or not folding. We have not had any roadmap. And if we will want to fold our parties, we will provide a proper roadmap in terms of engagement, in terms of how we will arrive at the resolutions, in terms of how we will tap into each and every person's intelligence and understanding on what is good for our coalition moving forward. That thing, it is not our priority now. Our priority now is to refine the budget that will be implemented, will be unveiled by our government in the next few months. Our priority is to see how we are going to bring down the escalating cost of living, how we are going to ensure that the very basic things that the common mwananchi requires to survive are affordable. That is our priority. And of course, grappling with the huge debt that the previous regime left in office, that's our priority now. It is not about whether we follow our parties or not. That is a conversation that we are willing to entertain maybe 3 or 4 years.
It is appropriate time.
It's absolutely. You've put it very clearly.
You know, you've quoted the Deputy President. During the campaigns, the Honorable MP for Madera, Rigathi Gachagua, was accused by several other leaders from Mount Kenya region of championing one giant party taking part in the elections from Mount Kenya. And any attempt by others to come up with, other small parties like Moses Kuria's party and others was actually being fought. And they were pushing back and saying, they do not want us to have other parties. They only want us to go into UDA. They want to force us to go into UDA. This is the same person who today is, you're quoting and saying, no, we are not interested in one big party. That is Malala's position. Really? What has changed?
I like the way you've said. Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, Member of Parliament for Madera by then, is completely different from His Excellency, Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. Aisha Jumwa Kantana, the Member of Parliament for Kilifi, wherever, for Malindi at that time, is different from Honorable Aisha Jumwa, the CS. And that is very clearly, because when you are a member of the county assembly, the way you conduct yourself is different from when you are elected the Speaker of the county assembly. So we must separate those kind of things. And we should also separate statements issued by people during campaigns and the statements issued by people who are running the government.
No, we can't.
I say so because when somebody is nominated in government, either by a CS or a PS, they are taken to the Kenya School of Government so that you are taught on the etiquettes within the government corridors, how the government behaves, whether, the application of soft power to solve a number of problems. So these are things which we should appreciate. And they know, and they know. At that time, when Rigathi Gachagua, the MP for Madera, maybe he never knew he would be the Deputy President. He could only speak on behalf of the people of Madera or the people of Mlima Kenya. But now that he has become the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, he has undergone a complete metamorphosis.
I don't know. Is that really what has happened? The Kenya School of Government teaches you the etiquette of government, how to behave, how to speak. Does it fiddle with the content of your character? Does it?
Absolutely. The content of a character of a person has got a lot to do with the education around yourself, either through direct learning or teaching, or through association of the people around that particular time. That is completely...
So what we're saying essentially is that this individual who has been an individual for their whole life, suddenly in 3 months, because they go through whatever induction by KSG, they change who they were?
Absolutely. Why not? Today you are a presenter. If something happens and you become a doctor, for example.
I change what I do. I don't change who I am.
No, but what you do defines who you are. The people who are watching you or listening to you, they will write small descriptions about you, which could be the true position. Not because let me tell you, it's only your maker who knows who you are inside. For us, your friends who see you, we will know who you are by what you say, but what you associate yourself with.
Exactly. So you can only train me how to speak a certain way in a certain place, but you cannot change who I inherently am.
Absolutely.
And this is what we're saying about a member of parliament, whether they're a member of parliament today or a CS tomorrow. That you can change the conduct. You can mold the conduct of this individual, but you cannot change the spirit of who they are. If somebody is like this, this is how they are.
In fact, what we're saying, Mheshimiwa, is that...
Anyway, that is immaterial. What is more important is the subject line. We are deviating from whatever we were discussing.
No, but I think it matters inherently.
To discussing the character of an individual, which I don't think is the best thing to do. Yeah?
It is about the pronouncements of the leadership of political parties.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the pronouncements of a leader of a political party today, if it changes tomorrow, what do we judge? Do we judge what they say today, or do we judge what they say then?
I have just said that that conversation about mergers, whether to follow one party and join the other, is not on our priority list as we speak today.
Okay.
It's not the current thing that
we need to focus on. And to us, we are not thinking about how to win the general election, the next elections, but we are thinking about how to reconstruct our economy. Once we have reconstructed our economy and the Kenyans are happy, winning the re-election becomes an automatic thing.
Okay. Can we really reconstruct this economy, Mheshimiwa?
Yes.
If we talk about, for the first time in a very long time, a majority of members of the previous parliament were re-elected, right? They are in the 13th parliament. Now, that 12th parliament oversighted all those things that you're talking about. It oversighted the raising of the debt ceiling and the March borrowing. It oversighted the economic situation and condition that we find ourselves in. And we expect the same parliament, same members, to change that.
60% of our current parliament, they are new. They are not the old people, right? It is my first time since I was elected to be in the leadership of a committee. And all the very important committees, they are under the stewardship of virtually new people, right? The second thing is that reconstructing the economy is as simple as scaling down on these multi-billion projects. Once you scale down those multi-billion projects, then you only focus on a very important infrastructure that this country cannot live without. And then you will be able to save some huge chunk of money, pay the debts, and then you re-strategize. Your expenditures are going forward. It's just like you are told that the water flowing in a particular river are very slow, is very small. So what you do is that you look for a way of blocking the river, the river. Then you create a huge dam. Then once you have created a huge dam, you find a way of surviving. Then by the time you open up, we will have enough water for everybody. So I believe, I am not an economist, but I have faith in the men and women that the president and his deputy have put together to be able to assist in resurrecting our economy, in building our economy afresh. And this has this may also include renegotiating our debts. Renegotiating our debts, and it's only a matter of time. We will unveil our first budget in the next few months, and that budget will explain what are the government's priorities, and again also we will have another bill that will indicate where the government will get this money, the source of funds, how we will restructure our tax regime, not to be punitive the way it is now, oppressive the way it is now, and move forward as a country.
Let's take a break on that note. It's 29 minutes to 10. The Honorable Didmus Barasa, the MP for Kimilili constituency, is our guest in the studio. We are talking about the state of the nation, the country. We've talked about political parties. He says, let's also discuss, that's very, very important, which is the focus of those in leadership now in righting this tilting ship of ours called Kenya. Mheshimiwa, there's a story on the page 6 of the Standard today which talks about Article 223 of the Constitution, which has now been the conversation in the last 2 weeks. The Controller of Budget came to Parliament and said, you know what, in the last days to the general election last year, I had to authorize some payments which was cited under Article 223. And Article 223 is one that allows the national government, the National Treasury to spend some money that had not been appropriated into the budget for any reason and then come and seek authority of Parliament within 2 weeks and within 2 months. And if within that 2 months Parliament is not sitting, the next time you sit within 2 weeks, Parliament must discuss this. This is to make sure that government does not halt, but also at the same time to make sure that the Parliament, which is a budget-making organ, does not get left behind in the crucial role of making the budget. Now, several issues have emerged. It emerges that an analysis of past annual budgets and reports from the offices of the Controller of Budget, the Auditor General and Parliamentary Committee on Finance indicates that Article 223 has been used with more frequency in recent years to approve billions of questionable expenditures, including some that have ended up in court. For example, 2018-2019 financial year, the National Treasury authorized the Ministry of Education to overspend 1.5 billion shillings on land compensation, an amount which exceeded the allowable threshold of 20 million budgeted provision for the item by 1.47 billion shillings. It was in excess by that much. Yet Article 223 says even when you spend, you cannot spend more than 10% of what has been appropriated for that particular ministry. Okay? So here we are with all these that have taken place. That is 2018-2019. In 2020-2021 financial year, the Controller of Budget approved 46 billion shillings out of more than 200 billion in total requests made under Article 223. During the financial year, the State Department for Housing and Urban Development spent the highest amount in additional funding at 8 billion shillings extra funding from what had been appropriated by Parliament, followed by the National Treasury, which spent 8.2 billion shillings extra from what had been appropriated by Parliament. So it's clear that Article 223 has been misused over time. We are all talking about what was happening in the last regime of President Uhuru Kenyatta. In the administration of President William Ruto, the initial Hustler Fund allocation of about 12 billion shillings was actually spent through Article 223. It did not come to Parliament first. It was approved, and then now Parliament has had to come later and rubber stamp the spending. Is Article 223 serving this country?
First, I'm one leader in this country who shoots straight. I'm very candid in what I say, and I will tell you what is in my heart. What you are holding in your hand is a newspaper, it's not a constitution. A newspaper is written by somebody. The fact that an article appears on the newspaper, it doesn't guarantee that is the true position. That writer of that article is trying to sanitize what the previous regime withdrew from public coffers within 26 minutes, about 15 billion, right? At that time. That's why you want to put in some very English wordings to say that we have been using this Article 225 to do whatever we did here. I want to put it to you, the true position, that the withdrawal of 15 billion was actually a haste. They stole. That was thieving. When you talk about the 12 billion Hustler Fund, the Committee on Delegated Legislation took a lot of time to go through the regulations and approve the regulations. Regulations are usually approved by a committee. They don't have to come to the plenary. So the fact that Kenyans never saw Parliament plenary at that very initial stage doesn't mean that the Hustler Fund regulations were never approved by Parliament. Committees have the full authority of the House. They make decisions.
You know, there are two things here. Nobody's questioning whether the regulations were passed by Parliament.
No, you are saying that the
Regulations-
parliament regularized.
No, regulations indeed were passed by Parliament. What do the regulations say? The regulations say that the source of Hustler Fund, there are 5 sources of Hustler Fund. Number 1, appropriation by Parliament. Right? Number 2, any proceeds that have come from the fund itself. You know, maybe interest, blah, 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 can come as source of the fund. 3, any donations from other quarters. Okay? That can come there. Others are if the cabinet secretary authorizes spending from his own budget to something like the Hustler Fund. Okay? Now, those are the sources of funding. That is the approved regulation. The regulations were passed by Parliament. Parliament did not appropriate 12 billion shillings to the Hustler Fund. The Hustler Fund received that money, as we've seen recently, through Article 223. It's not about sanitizing, because in fact the money that this article is raising, the fact that there have been other instances where money has been spent questionably, and the excuse has been Article 223.
You know,
The 2018-2019 budget is talking about an extra 1.5 billion shillings spent by the Ministry of Education on land.
we have got 2 things which are facts. We have one, that Uhuru Kenyatta and Ukuru Yatan withdrew 15 billion from a national public coffer for whatever reason they wanted to do it. That's a fact. It happened. Within 26 minutes, it happened. And the Comptroller of Budget said she was forced to sign these things to approve the withdrawal of that amount of money. That's a fact. We have another fact that the Hustler Fund exists. It's a fact. And the government put in about 12 billion. It's a fact. Now, political pundits who are allied to the previous regime, who are trying also to sanitize, the withdrawal of 15 billion within 26 minutes, they are now, paraphrasing their English to mean that even the current regime also, they withdrew 12 billion for Hustler Fund. You cannot compare the two by all standards. You
Because
cannot.
of the 3 billion shilling difference? Or?
No. The 15 billion went to do what? When the government was,
You see,
let me tell you. Let me tell you.
You're a member of Parliament.
Yes.
Okay? We are not questioning the executive because you don't represent the executive unless your brief changed. You represent the legislature. The people of Kimilili sent you to Parliament. They did not send you to the executive. As a member of Parliament, the question that we are asking is a question that we expect you to be asking. Where did the 15 billion shillings go? You have said it was a heist. Now, that's what we expect to hear from Parliament. Parliament does the investigation and tells us it was a heist. So, and the question that we started by asking, is Article 223 a loophole that could be used by any administration, whether you call it Uhuru Kenyatta, Didmus Barasa, whoever is in power?
It's not. First, just to answer your question, I am a member of Parliament representing the people of Kimilili constituency, but I am responsible to the decision that the executive makes that comes from my action as a member of Parliament. I must be responsible, right? The second thing is that when you are looking at whether Article 225 was misused or not, you have to look at the intention. We are talking about, we have had a general election. A winner has been declared. The loser has gone to the Supreme Court. The process is ongoing. The current regime by then, it was very obvious that they were exiting regardless of the outcome of the Supreme Court decision. What were they transacting the money, 15 billion for what? For what? When you look at it, you begin to see some criminality in it.
Can I come back just a little bit so that we can get some clarity here? When this 15 billion, because it's important, it's huge, when this 15 billion was being released from the country's bank account, And one would assume that for money to be released, that Parliament would say, okay. Are we saying that Parliament did not say okay? And are we saying that Parliament then was not aware that this money had been released? And are we also saying that Parliament did not ask questions if they knew and if they're aware of it coming out? They did not ask questions as per, hold on a minute, where is this money going and what is the purpose of it?
First thing is that I am not aware whether at that time, because most of parliamentary committees were controlled by them, by government. I don't know whether they made somewhere to approve it or not. But the fact is that this money were withdrawn, were in cash, they were put in some lorries. Ideally we have a government policy that requires that withdrawal of amount of money that exceeds a particular amount, you do a wire transfer. This money was loaded in some lorries and taken somewhere. You can imagine. You can imagine.
You've introduced a completely different topic here. Because if you have this information, is it information you came across when this year began, or is it information
after the Control of Budget spoke on it?
Or is it information that you knew even as a time when this particular action
heist?
This matter happened under Bush, secretly, under the table. No one was aware. Until, of course, the government is an animal. Whatever you do in the secret will come to be known because books can be accessed. Everybody has to explain where this money went to. So that's when the Control of Budget was summoned by Parliament to come and explain. That is what she said. And she began to produce documents, emails, letters from CS Treasury that released this amount of money. That is how we came to know about this. And from that time, a lot is happening. We have a lot of investigations that are going on. And I can confirm that I may not have the details, the whole facts, because I'm not among the people who are carrying out investigations. But from the face of it, this is actually a haste.
Which is why we are asking.
Where phone calls are made,
yes,
letters are written, in a span of 26 minutes, some lorry or a canter or wherever way arrives, money is stashed inside, it leaves, so that you cannot trace where this money, if you do a wire, you can say this money left this account, this particular time, went to this account, part of it went to here, So we are talking about a government must be accountable, that you do your things in an open manner, that each and every citizen will be able to see that this is the amount of money withdrawn, this is what the government has gone to pay with this amount of money, this is what the government intends to achieve by this amount of money. So you cannot compare. However genius you are, even if you went to study in one of the best English school, and you want to bring the literature to try to compare the Hustler Fund and this money that was withdrawn in 26 seconds, you cannot. From the face of it, this was a haste.
Okay. Yeah. Where is the Hustler Fund?
The Hustler Fund, everybody understands that it's in circulation. The hustlers are doing business with it. Right?
Where is it ensconced? Where exactly is it? Where is it situated?
I can only...
For instance, Mheshimiwa, I have borrowed from the Hustler Fund several times, okay?
Yeah.
It still has stuck my limit to 500. But every time I borrow 500, 25% is withheld. And I'm told this is going to savings and all. As a member of parliament, do you have oversight of where the savings are held, where the pension is held, and where the funds, who's the fund manager?
From where I sit, as a member of parliament, my only center of interest is the hardware. The software, you ask about the people who are administering this fund. You ask the CS, who will be able to tell you the software. I have limited myself to understanding the hardware of the Hustler Fund, right? Who are the beneficiaries? What's going to do? What's the repayment period? What are the interest rates? But the software in terms of the account where the money is held, how it's transferred, that's a technical question that you reserve it for the CS in charge.
In the event a report comes to Parliament and it raises one or two issues about, the management of the Hustler Fund and this and the other, as members of Parliament, you'll take responsibility of this and say, okay, so let's follow up on where the loopholes are, seal those loopholes, look at the bigger picture. Is the Hustler Fund, has it by and large benefited the intended beneficiaries, the hustlers? If it has, this small bit that is not working, how can we make sure that it's working? True?
Yes, true.
Okay. With that same argument, Article 223 of the Constitution was inserted here so that if the government gets to a point where it wants to spend money and Parliament is not in session, they can spend money and then come to Parliament and say, guys, we spent money, here is where we spent it. There's a wire transfer, you can see money left Treasury, it went to Ndu, spend it.
And if you're looking for it, it's found over there.
You can find it. But then, here you have now realized that this Article 223 has been and can be misused. So the question to you as MPs is, so what are you doing about it to seal this loophole so that nobody else sitting in the National Treasury and the Office of Control of Budget can actually not coerce one another, but even at some point collude to release money from the national coffers?
It is very important that Parliament of Kenya, both the National Assembly and the Senate, we must actually set up a committee that, or rather all departmental committees must have an extra role of actually monitoring and evaluating the implementation of the laws that guide operations within the state departments that are oversighted by them, with a view of improving them, with a view of ensuring that we have a prudent management of resources and improve accountability. I agree with you that every article of the Constitution can be misused by anybody. So there is need to ensure that these articles that executive uses to withdraw money without the approval of Parliament are looked into. We must also look at that particular article that the previous regime was misusing. As we speak today, a sitting president can actually be a legislating president. What he needs to do is to draft a bill, bring the bill in Parliament, and if the bill flops, if the bill is maybe approved by Parliament, he can actually not sign it into law, but bring it with further amendments. When he brings it through a memo, is that this is how it's supposed to be, and is now upon Parliament to raise 2/3 to defeat the president's reservations, which is very difficult. So meaning if you don't do it, the law stands passed. So these are some of the things that we need to look into. And I was not just opposed to the previous BBI proponents by the sake of it, but I said, in future, if we are to change our constitution, we need to have some kind of a seminar and carry out an audit of our current constitution from chapter 1 to the last chapter, so that we actually are amending our constitution by improving our systems of governance, improving our accountability process, improving our service delivery, so that we amend the whole constitution in totality in terms of from chapter 1 to the very last chapter.
Do you think Parliament can improve in its role in oversighting some of these things that we see? Just in direct link to that question, where we see over time that there have been loopholes. I mean, there's information that people seem to have. So the question is, why not use that information to ask questions within that essentially safeguards the very spirit of what Parliament is ought to do? Do you think Parliament can do a better job?
To be candid and fair, the democracy of African countries has not matured to a level similar to what we see in Europe. Yeah? and this has got a lot to do with the how the fabric that maketh our political system, where you have the head of state as the party leader. Today, I am sure that the members of the backbenches, who are actually the members of the minority coalition, when an idea comes, majority of them will support because their party leader has said, this is our party position. We may have a few who will look at it from an independent point of view, but the majority of them will look at it differently.
Can it be better?
Even in the ruling coalition as well? We've had situations where people say, this is the government position, this is the party position. You see the SGs of parties saying we are going to discipline those who will go against the party's position. And the question is, does the party position similar to the Wanjiku position? So these are some of the intrigues that actually affect the independence of
So are you saying then Parliament cannot then properly do its job because there is a chokehold that is on Parliament by the executive? It doesn't matter the administration.
At least in the 13th Parliament, we've not had an issue for determination that will make us, draw a conclusion that Parliament has been infringed by external forces or not. And from what I've seen the head of state behave currently, and even from what I've seen also the members of the minority party behave, I can say I can see light at the end of the tunnel, that this 13th Parliament is a bit different from the previous ones. The previous ones, where I served in, the 12th Parliament, there were a lot of, succession politics. There were a lot of, high electric politics, where anything that was introduced on the floor of the House, the NASA principals by then will look at it in the political eye. They will do their meeting and say, our party position that we don't support. They will politicize whatever thing that was coming out. But I have faith in the 13th Parliament because one, the head of state doesn't meddle in the affairs of the National Assembly as we speak today. I've also seen quite a number of members of the ODM or the NASA coalition defy the direction given by NASA principal Raila Odinga. So I can even say that and of course 60% of members of Parliament are fairly new, and this is not a succession term by where the head of state is exiting his seat, is eligible for re-election. So everybody is really working very hard to be noticed and secure a second term, including the president. So we have got elements of really listening to what Mwanainji is saying and not just being a populist, but rather following what is good for this country.
Run out of time. Mheshimiwa Didmus Barasa, thank you very much for joining us today. Come again soon.
Thank you very much and good to see you.